Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Lambo channel. The crypto market is pulling back yet again as of the time that I'm recording this, and perhaps the many chart analysts who are warning that it's at least possible, if not probable, that Bitcoin pulls into the 90,000s and XRP drops below $2. It's certainly possible that they're correct, but I just got to emphasize, even if so, keep your eyes on the prize. It is absolutely plausible that XRP, even from where it is now, a little over $2, it's absolutely plausible that XRP could increase in price anywhere from 500 to 1,000%. Now, I always admit I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't make price predictions because I'm not an actual chart guy myself, but I'm happy to share my perspective on what I think is at least possible based on my real world experience, meaning what I've actually seen happen in crypto. And even from this price level, even though it would have been way better to purchase XRP before its first leg pump in November when it was 49 cents, even though that would have been way better. Even from here, the idea of it going upwards of 1,000%, and I'm more on the conservative side in terms of expectations, even I will acknowledge that's safely within the realm of possibility. Not crazy. But before going further, I do want to be clear, I do not have a financial background of any kind. I am not offering financial advice, and you definitely should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. I'm just an enthusiast who enjoys making YouTube videos about crypto-related topics, but just as a hobby and just for fun. As I record this video, it is 12:52 p.m. Central Time on Saturday, June 21st, 2025. The second day of summer, the second actual day of summer here. XRP at $2.10. So down a little, just a hair over the last 24 hours. Bitcoin at $103,385. But look at the 24-hour chart. Like, we had a more notable dip yesterday. Went back up to what, $2.14, and now back down a bit. It was down $2.09, either right before I hit record or even right after. But either way, just again, endless warnings. You might be tired of hearing it, but I got to repeat it because this is what's on the radar. Tons of warnings still from analysts that this is at least possible. Not everybody is convinced that's the most probable thing. Kind of split down the middle here, but. With the weakness yesterday and what it's today, I think some more people are starting to believe that's at least possible. And so, I was watching, and this is interesting, I was watching this video this morning. It was published just a few hours ago. It's got Bitcoin maximalist Anthony Pompliano. It's his channel. And he's speaking to Jordy Visser, who I became aware of more recently, I guess within the last few months at some point. And I've quickly become a huge fan of this guy. It's Jordy on the right here. He's just a wealth of knowledge and experience. I'm not going to read this, but it's kind of his profile. It's just on the CoinDesk website. But he's got 30 years of experience in the investment and finance industry, and he's the president and chief investment officer of Weiss Multi-Strategy Advisors. And so bringing his wealth of knowledge and experience to a conversation about crypto, very fascinating, and he does tend to get the big picture and factoring all the relevant pieces, what's going on right here. And so just a couple of the things that he watched, and really, and I'll tell you this, like, anytime one of Pomp's videos pops up in my feed and Jordy Visser is the guest, I'm absolutely clicking on it. So I've become that big of a fan that quickly. And he noted just a couple things here. Well, actually, I want to share something that Pomp had to say too, but it's kind of interesting coming from a Bitcoin maximalist. But Jordy, he predicted we are absolutely going to blast off. Just the crypto asset class, Bitcoin, altcoins included, and what's going to kick things off for altcoins specifically, which do move in tandem, alt season. He thinks that Ethereum closing above $2,700 for 2 weeks would kick off alt season. And so over the last several months, while people were screaming Ethereum's dead because it dropped down to $1,400, I said, no, that's bogus nonsense. When the price goes lower, that in and of itself does not mean that an asset is dead. It just causes people to speak as though it is the case that it's dead. It happened with XRP. People were screaming out throughout 2024. Obviously, those posts on social media didn't age well. But people have done this about Bitcoin, and they're doing it about Ethereum because that's the most recent thing that dropped dramatically down to $1,400. It then jumped up to about $2,800. It's currently a little over $2,400. So closing above that level of $2,700 in his experience. And he gave the rationale as to why. I don't need to regurgitate all of it on the channel, but he believes that'll kick off alt season, which obviously would include XRP. Now, even Anthony Pompliano, he's just Bitcoin all the way. He's made that very clear. Even he believes that there is going to be an alt season, and it's going to happen in the second half of 2025. He absolutely believes that it's going to happen. He has a close. It's, the way he's talking, it sounded like close to 100% conviction that's going to happen. And of course, that would include everything, including XRP. So, summer doesn't end until, what is it, September 20th or 22nd. So there is still that possibility that you could be seeing alt season kickoff this summer. There have been lots of analysts, as I've been highlighting, talking about this idea just based on even just historic precedent. Bitcoin taking off. We had an alt season in the summer of 2017. There's historic precedent for that. And so that has happened every year. It's the fourth year in a cycle, and we are in the fourth year of a cycle right now. So if it doesn't happen this time, that would be a bit odd. And if it doesn't, okay, we could look back and say, well, there's maybe the analysts that were arguing, hey, this cycle is lengthened. Maybe it's different. Maybe that's the reason why it's a little bit different or extended, in which case maybe there's an argument there. But I'm still a bit skeptical of that, because there is such a high correlation between global M2 liquidity and Bitcoin and the crypto asset class. So obviously, it's not going to perfectly 100% correlate. But if you're playing the odds directionally, I mean, this is just a matter of fact statement. Bitcoin about 90% of the time directionally follows what global M2 is doing. So it's not a fluke. That's why that is one of the most important metrics to look at. What's happening right there. One of the most important pieces of data. So, I mean, if you're always playing the odds, like if you're going to bet one way or the other, or if you consistently bet that way that's going to correlate, you'll win about 90% of the time. So, given that that's where it is, there are reasons that guys like Raoul Pal, a global macro investor and the founder of Real Vision, the former Goldman Sachs guy, there's a reason that he's saying, hey, if Bitcoin follows M2, you're looking at $140,000 Bitcoin in July if it follows it that closely. So we'll see here. So look, eyes on the prize here. And there's this post from Mikey Bull Crypto, and this kicks off alt season. That's the reason I'm highlighting this. Maybe you don't care about Ethereum, in which case that's perfectly fine. But here's an ETHUSD chart. It says, while many are becoming bearish on ETH, it's coiling up within the macro triangle. Explosive breakout to a cycle peak loading. So I've seen lots of posts from lots of analysts like that, but there is still that concern that we could drop lower. Now, I want to share with you a few key parts of a newsletter which was just published today. This comes from XRP community member and chart analyst, Crypto Insight UK. And I shared this newsletter on X after I read it. He consistently does a good job. And so I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but there are a few key parts that I think you're going to find really fascinating and a source for optimism, even though there could be a little bit of a scary bit if his suspicions are correct in the short term. Tons of reasons for optimism here. And so this idea that XRP is going to go into double-digit price action, absolutely plausible. And so here, this one was titled, The Calm Before the Crypto Storm, What Happens Next? The Weekly Insight, edition 147. And he started by talking about what's happening in geopolitical terms. Obviously, there's the news that I'm sure you've all heard about with Israel and Iran. And he noted, I'm not going to delve into the news side of that in any sort of meaningful way, because that's not the purpose of this channel. I'm going to talk about what it means in terms of the market. And in terms of the market, what he's saying here is exactly in line with what I already believe based on data that I've been aware of for a long time, which I've shared before, but it's worth repeating here. This isn't just me that randomly thinks this. The data shows this is true. When you have these chaotic events, even if it's war-type scenarios, very scary things, missiles launching, whatever the situation may be, going back decades, you pretty much always see some sort of market response. Typically, you can get a lot of times you can even get a pretty big crash out of fear. And we have seen some of that even with this. But it's short-lived stuff, and it's not going to change anything on a macro scale. And by the way, you know who else agrees with that? It's not just me. It's not just Crypto Insight UK here, which he absolutely shared that perspective. Jordy Visser, who's been in finance for decades now, he absolutely, and he articulated it in this video from this morning, he absolutely just hit the nail on the head, noting that you absolutely can have these instances where, the markets react to this stuff, but it's a short-lived thing, and then rocket to the upside. So if you're fearful about what's happening on, in regards to anything geopolitical, don't be. And it's not that anything can be an absolute guarantee. You can have some sort of outlier, some broader conflict that for a longer period of times could spook the market. But is that probable? We're playing the odds here. Is that probable? Well, history tells us no. People think it's the end of the world and it's the next world war. That stuff is always spouted. Probably not, though. So let's talk about what's happening in the short term, and Crypto Insight UK continues to provide some warnings here. In the short term, he has this section titled Altcoin Thoughts, ETH and XRP. And he notes here, the $2,200 range for Ethereum looks probable. And so he's looking at this lower liquidity, so a lower liquidity sweep for Ethereum. And then he highlighted XRP. Same thing right here. He said, and $1.92 range for XRP. And that's in line with what he's been saying he expects to occur. In fact, if anything, he's made it kind of clear that if it doesn't happen, which is possible, but if it doesn't happen, he'd be a bit surprised. So he's definitely leaning in favor of this thing pulling back. And there are lots of analysts that think that's the case as well. Like, for instance, Credible Crypto. I mean, there's tons of others. Casey Trades. There's tons of analysts that are in line with this thinking. But again, not the end of the world. And so he says here, it's important to note that if we do see a flush into this range, prices often wick significantly lower as traders are forced to close positions and sell their longs, creating a cascading effect. This can lead to aggressive downside wicks. If we see such a move, expect an additional 10% to the downside or possibly more. However, this drop will likely be quickly absorbed by long positions and limit orders like mine, which will drive the price back up swiftly. Yeah, and so I'm sure there are plenty of people with limit orders at lower prices. Maybe they don't even think they're going to get filled, but then if it happens, it's like, woohoo! And so if you see a big enough crater, you're just going to see the price V-bottom out of there, just rocket to the upside. Stuff like that happens all the time when the assets get oversold. And so if we do see this final correction, which lots of analysts, even the blockchain backer in his most recent video was talking about this, says normally what happens in situations like this, doesn't have to, but normally what happens is you do see this final pullback in the chart structure, which in this case he believes would put Bitcoin in the mid 90,000s, perhaps 98,000 maybe. That's in line with what Crypto Insight UK is talking about here. But what about Global M2? Well, he's got a section on this also, and I wanted to share this real quick because I have been talking about this a lot because it is such an important metric. And no metric, even this is the end-all be-all, but this metric is probably as close as you're going to get to such a thing, right? And so here he wrote, and this is the section titled Global M2 Money Supply. The reason I'm confident that prices will rebound quickly, if we do see a flush to the downside, and even if we don't, is due to several positive macroeconomic factors. Global M2 money supply is seeing upticks, with M2 approaching all-time highs. Raoul Pal and Jamie Coots really broke down the macro indicators and their relationship on crypto price with a roundup here this week. And he shared the link. I actually did watch that a couple days ago. Great video. These guys are so data-driven. I love it. If you want to nerd out a bit and kind of just have them literally break down everything, that's the type of video where you can find that. And so they talk about the importance, yes, of global liquidity, global M2 here specifically. And they talk about top indicators, like the NUPL, and I was talking about that a couple days ago. Well, here's why. It's because when you get to that point, the NUPL, which is a net unrealized profit / loss, when you get to the point where a certain percentage, even if you're just talking about Bitcoin, which leads the market, so it makes sense to look at that first, actually, because alt season is going to lag out after, historically it does anyway. So if you're just looking at, the net unrealized profit in the Bitcoin market cap, if you just look at that, you can see like we are not near the top. And I was mentioning that in a video again a couple days or so ago. We're at like 55%, and where should you start to have fear? Like when you get closer to 75%, maybe. Then you can start to be like, okay, this is getting pretty close to where historically you start to see some tops. And I think it peaked 78% in 2021. The last cycle. And then the cycle before that, it was higher, but there are some reasons for that I talked about in previous videos, so I don't want to get into it here. Close to like 86, 87%, but with institutional money flowing in, it's behaving a bit differently. So I'd say when you get closer to that, it's like, okay. So that's another thing you can look at, but we're not, see, all of this comes together for Confluence. The market cycle's not done. XRP, yeah, it already melted faces a little bit, got a little singed, right? But the true face melt, that comes in just a little bit. We're getting closer. We're definitely getting very close. Let me go down a little bit. The whole newsletter is great. You guys should take time to read the whole thing, but let me share with you just one more section here, just a portion of it at least. If in doubt, zoom out. This is fascinating. Okay. It says what I'm essentially saying is that even with the potential for a short-term pullback in crypto, though I can't predict the exact timing, the next phase will likely be one of euphoria and parabolic upside. For Bitcoin, I would expect at least an 80% to 150% increase from this range. Whew. Okay, if he's right about that, I mean, you could be looking at over $200,000 Bitcoin. So I mean, he could be right. I get a bit more skeptical when you start to get to those price levels. A lot of analysts that I follow are much more confident in like maybe about $150,000 Bitcoin, but who knows? I mean, he could be right. I will just say, if that happens, that's when these higher price expectations for XRP, that's when they start to make a whole lot more sense to me. Because a huge part of this has to do with how much profit is taken from Bitcoin and then flows into altcoins like XRP. So this is why this is important, even if you don't care about Bitcoin and you don't hold it. The higher the price of Bitcoin, the more profits will be taken and then roll into your XRP and other altcoins. That's why that matters. So I would love to see like a $250,000 Bitcoin this cycle. I'm a bit skeptical of it going that high. I'm just saying, if that happens, whew, hot damn, XRP. There will be so many more people with life-changing wealth this year if that happens. It's just going to get completely ridiculous. And so then he says, for altcoins, the potential gains could be anywhere from 500% to 1,000%, or even 2,000%, and in some cases, 10,000% if you pick the right projects. This is the stage we're in. Okay, that is true. I am certain that is true. I'm as close to 100% certain as possibly could be. And so think about this. Even from roughly $2, we're a little over $2 in XRP. Well, I mean, a 500% increase, that just takes you like $13. That ain't crazy. That is not remotely crazy. That's easy to believe might happen this cycle. And then if you're talking about some more money flowing into Bitcoin, a little bit higher than 150K, well, then XRP getting to like 1,000% from here ain't crazy. And so even then you'd be talking about that $25, $26 region for XRP at 1,000% from here, roughly. Not crazy. I know that these expectations are... Oh, my dog started moving. Come here, girl. Come on. Come here, sweetie. Okay. Come here, girl. Sorry. She started running away. So she's under my desk about 100% of the time that I'm recording. That's the first time I can ever recall where she started to run away. But I needed to make sure that she wasn't getting into anything else in another room just to be safe. So sorry for that distraction. I had to pull her back. That's never happened before, actually. The biggest disturbance she's ever made, and some of you know what I'm going to say. It's when I was recording and she just vomited just out of nowhere. Sometimes that just happens. Dogs get sick like people randomly. She got sick and she just vomited. And I was like, whoa! And I just kept it in. Because that's the Moon Lambo style, my friends. I do everything in one recording for better or worse. Like if I say something stupid, whatever it is, what it is. I'm not editing this stuff. I just want these videos to be the same as if we're sitting down having a beer on a patio on a nice sunny day. Just the type of conversation we had, unedited, just raw. That's what I prefer. That's what I always wanted the channel to be. So my attitude is, it is what it is. Also, kind of funny. And my dog was fine, so it's totally okay here. But anyway, now I kind of lost my spot here, though. Yeah. Oh, I guess I was talking about the price range. Yeah. So my perspective, anyway, my humble opinion. Yeah. If you're talking about 1,000% gain for XRP, not crazy. Now, as far as $2,000, you start to lose me there because then you're talking about $50 XRP this cycle. I'd be happy to be wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. I doubt it. I just think there's about no chance of that. And then 10,000%. Now, mind you, he's not saying that for XRP. But that would be for like small cap coins if you pick a winner. And that is like, you're so close to just gambling at that point. It's like, that's not the world I want to live in. I'd prefer to live in large caps and maybe some mid caps. That's pretty much what I do. Heavy and obviously utility, but like the market's already told you which ones they believe are the useful ones. They're at the top. Those are the large caps. The market already told you. They did the homework for you. Okay. That's why it's not hard to figure this out. If you just invest in the large caps, that's great. And you can still get ridiculous outsized returns, incredible asymmetry in investing compared to other markets, because there's almost no money in crypto. There's almost no money in the crypto asset class. So to get it to double and triple and quadruple doesn't take that much. And then one more little bit here. I did want to mention this. So he says, finally, Bitcoin dominance supports his thesis. If history repeats itself, and I believe it will, although perhaps even more aggressively, we can expect aggressive pullback in Bitcoin dominance. This is when altcoins will significantly outperform, pushing to the upside. As seen in the small white circle labeled XRP move, even a 10% pullback in Bitcoin dominance saw XRP rise from 50 cents to $2.70 topping at $3.30, and that's got to be a typo. XRP peaked at $3.40 this cycle, a new all-time high. But this is what he's talking about where I'm moving my mouse. This XRP move, and this is the Bitcoin dominance chart. So you can see, look at how much Bitcoin dominance fell there, and look at what it did, just that little bit move. And this wasn't this wasn't like some crazy dump like you'd see towards the end of a cycle going into alt season. Just wait, because this is always what happens. This is another reason I'm confident that the cycle is just not over. There's no world in my mind in which all this money is flown into Bitcoin. This is the peak, and then we just don't get to have some super ridiculous alt season, because that would mean human behavior change. I just don't believe that. What, humans are no longer interested in taking profit and then cycling it into other things that they think are going to go up. Like, humans just no longer have that behavior that leads to that type of action, even though going back for the entire existence of the crypto asset class they have, and now it's just gone. Like, did human DNA change? I don't think so, folks. It's just not done. It is. I do not believe that. And so anyway, then he says, now imagine what a 30% to 40% pullback, or even more, in Bitcoin dominance could do to alts. Whether that comes from 67%, 68%, and 69%, or 74% dominance, we're in the range where it's time to allocate to altcoins, top up your bag, and prepare for a significant move in altcoins against Bitcoin, and Bitcoin against the US dollar. It's going to lead to an explosive upside. Yeah, and so this is a perspective, this is a shared perspective that, like, all the smartest, most reputable minds that I follow believe in something similar to this. And why wouldn't you? Like, everything is perfectly lined up. Yes, this should be happening. And so I'm most excited about what this means for XRP, and that's why I say, and I said, as I said at the outset, this idea of XRP going up 500 to 1,000%, even from this level, not crazy. So we'll see what happens. But like, if you're not excited right now, what is functionally wrong with you? Because even if you're worried about a pullback, why are you worried about a pullback? Like, that would just be normal. It's not something to freak out about. If a thing that you know probably should happen then happens, but then you know that what happens after that is that the price goes to the upside, and that would also be normal. Why are you freaking out? Use logic, reason, data. Okay, just don't get hit in the feels just because of short-term price action here. So anyway, excellent newsletter here from Crypto Insight UK. So I thought I'd share a few thoughts about this on some of the stuff that he covered here. But even if the market goes down, whatever, it's fine. I've been through way worse. I've been holding XRP for 7.5 years. I've never sold a single XRP in my life, though I fully intend to this cycle. I've seen way worse than this. This volatility is normal. We were having the same conversations years ago, just in a different range. Remember when XRP was ranging from like the mid 20-cent region, and it was down to like 20 cents and then up to 30 cents. And oh my God, could it fall to 15? Oh my God, but then it's up to 35 cents. Oh, but then it's back to 25 cents. Those are big percentage changes, though. It's the same type of thing we're dealing with here. We're just at a higher price level because the market has continued to insist XRP makes sense. When you're looking at the top 10 coins by market cap, which we have on the screen here, just understand that this is the world telling you right now, these are the coins that make the most sense. And so you can dispute that, and this can change as years pass, but look, it's not a fluke that Bitcoin, ETH, and XRP have just always been in the top. It's not a fluke. XRP is an obvious winner. So, anyway, just some thoughts. You guys tell me what you think, but I'm ready for the show to get on the road. We're close, though. We are close. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the moon, Lambo.